how do you do that? And you need to localize that. You need to basically understand what functionality you are adding into your code. So it is extremely hard engineering problem. And you need to automate the process. And you cannot do it just one chip by chip, put under a microscope. You have to do it for millions and chips that's produced on the same design. So these are extremely hard problems that the entire, I think, engineering discipline is to consider and consider. So I'll skip probably because I think these are some of the attacks I'll be, I'm interested to talk, but probably I will just skip for the sake of time. So hardware security itself is an important thing. The next topic that I'm quite interested to talk today, excuse me. Which is not seen that much is the sensors. Why I'm calling about sensors? Why it is important from a security point of view. So if you see the growth, $29 billion by 2025, the annual market of, this is just the economy. But for me, the most exciting part is that when I talk to my student, that if my eyes and ears align, no matter what I decide, I'm seeing you, I'm hearing you, and if my brain, my processing system basically gets wrong information through my eyes or my ears, any decision I take will be wrong. Isn't that true? It is fundamentally, can be really, go bad. So how do we make security in the sensor? So it is an extremely hard problem. Those who are familiar with the hardware architecture. So if you see that, say, what does a sensor do? A tiny sensor. That is either your camera sensor or I'm talking about your vibration sensor or your acoustic sensor or your, name it a gyroscope, or any sensor that you're talking, then typically you don't spend money for that. You try to take it for granted that when you build your system, maybe you are paying a lot of money for LiDAR because LiDAR market is still in research, it's a lot of things. But if you look into this type of, sensor architecture, the architecture is quite simple, that there is an environment here, and you try to collect basically either it's a passive sensor or active sensor. You try to get some signals, and through that signal, you need build some sensing structure, and this sensing structure can be electrical, mains type of thing, chemical thing, or biological sensor. There are many different. It's an extremely well-defined research area that you can build, and then you try to get some usable signal out of that. Am I right? And once you get some usable signal, they are very typically very little. You cannot get it out of it. You need to amplify these signals. So you use typically an amplifier in this step after coming to them. Once you get the amplification, then you get a lot of noise because you don't extract only the useful signal that you're looking for, but comes with a lot of noise. And then you use typically filters. In that level, you can use even simple filters like Kalman filters or other filters, which are very robust. And you can use them, and they can be used. Once you do that, this is all electrical engineers are doing. If you are all computer scientists here in this room, probably you did not learn it in your undergraduate school. But once you have done it, then starting here it gets interesting. Then you are in the digital world. You basically convert these signals to digital numbers, zeros and ones. And once it becomes zeros and ones, then rest is basically simple. We start building computer architecture and then algorithms and all these things. And then we connect it to the computer and so on. So what happens, what's interesting so far, is that all these layers that I was talking about, these 5 layers before ADC, we don't think at all about security. We just take it for granted that all these layers are performing and giving me a signal, right signal. And then all the money, all the algorithms, we're trying to solve everything when it connected to the computer. So my analogy, when I was saying my ears and eyes are taking wrong data, and then I'm trying to correct it, and all these things later phase. A few years ago, it was quite, when I was thinking, I think that doesn't make sense to me, it doesn't add up. Of course, it probably adds up from an economic point of view, because I want to make my sensor as cheap as possible. Maybe I'm spending cents these days, by the way. Some of the sensors, because you're producing them in billions, you need so many sensors. But Amazon can hear, am I right? 20,000 above or below 20, if you know that subsonic and supersonic, and also the acoustic domain, optics domain also. You can't see many opticals, frequency, but computers can see. So if you can spoof those data, so any sound, let's say you are listening radio, and I will show an example, an interesting example, that through the radio or through your phone, you can talk to the Alexa, and if somebody can hack into your phone, he can pass signal that is not in the audible range, and Alexa will basically perform, and people have shown it. It is possible. I will show an example. Same thing for drones. You can hack into a drone, you can hack into almost anything that I can tell you, any device that you are trusting around you, you are assuming nothing can go wrong. But 5 or any other architecture is not anymore trusted. So you cannot take it, you need to doubt your hardware. If you are really thinking about, there are many rumors that that backdoor hardware has been used in the Syrian war recently, this decade. The radar system was jammed. There is no truth on it, but it was published in IEEE, that's why I can speak. IEEE and ACM proceedings, that hardware backdoor was used to avoid the radar system when the plane entered the Syrian airspace. So these type of things can be vulnerable. And thirdly, I try to demonstrate today, where I spend a lot of time, that your environment is not trusted. The coffee mug or the trash can beside your inverter is not trusted anymore. So it can be basically, it can make things vulnerable and can go wrong. The fourth thing is even more scary, is that I believe that, this is my personal belief, that any type of security, because this is opening up the Pandora box, I try to open up the Pandora box, that how everything is vulnerable. I think the future attacks, either as a national security or if you are working for private sector, this type of security issues will be if you are doing a forensic analysis, if you have interest on doing forensics basically after things happen, you need to look into aspects that multiple layers probably have been crossed or can be crossed, that can make things in fact not anymore robust if you are thinking from a robustness point of view. And this is really takes me to the second point, that why do we care about it? Because I think from an engineering design principle, whatever you are designing, besides your performance, your cost, your power, your energy, all these factors that we consider, try to optimize as an engineer, you need to also think about that security should be first class, which is not. Security in design is a second class citizen. We think afterwards. We build the system and then we start crying that my system is not secure. And I don't think that can continue anymore. I think that needs to be stopped. And how can it be stopped? It can be stopped because this type of knowledge needs multidisciplinary. So we need to start conversation among our colleagues. And we need to encourage our students to speak to other students. We need to basically build our education system. At the end of the day, I'm an educator. So I need to also, I look into my curriculum a lot, very carefully. I'm very passionate about K-12 education and engineering education myself. I try to see how these gaps, it's a very unbelievable hard gap, but how this can be bridged, how we can educate our next generation through this path, and how they can build the defenses and all this. So by this time probably you got tired that this professor guy is doing all this hardcore stuff, security, but we do fun, trust me. This is just some snapshots from the last after spring party that we had in our lab.